All right, welcome. We got another great prospect podcast. I'm here, Coach Schuman, and then I have Coach D here with me. We have a great guest today, Angela and Angie. I shouldn't say Angela, Angie Wiley,
Either way.
and we're excited to talk to her today about mindset and performance, and how important that is in everything that you do as an athlete, and not just as you do an athlete, but in life as well. But we're going to talk about how athletes can really help themselves improve their overall performance through making themselves have a better performance mindset. So, without further ado, it's great to have you on, Angie. We're excited to talk to you today.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. It's great to be here.
No problem. If you could go into your whole background, just so everyone watching the show can get familiar. Dive into how you got into the field, athletic backgrounds, anything like that, and then everything that you're doing today from that standpoint.
All right. Okay. I'll just jump in then and I'll start from grew up in a small town, Missouri, and not a whole lot to do. So I played four sports all through high school. And my favorite was basketball, went on and played college basketball, 2 years at a junior college in Kansas City, and then 2 years at Pitt State University in Kansas. Loved my college career. I will say very early on as an athlete, I saw the impact of mindset, saw how much that could make a difference in, the play and the outcome. From college, I actually went to a career in sales. So I was in the medical device industry in sales and sales management for 22 years. During that time, though, I would say I felt a calling really early on, that to teach the mindset, because again, I saw the impact early, and then even in the professional world, I saw how much of an impact it made. And the question was always coming up, especially 30 years ago, why is this not taught? Because it's very teachable and it is a skill. And so with that calling not going away as my own kids got older and into sports, I was still in the device world, but I hired a coach personally to hold me accountable, over, almost 15 years ago now, but to help me move forward. And so in 2013, I started You Are Strong, which is the mindset company that I have now. I started it geared towards athletes. At that point, it was my kids' ages. I was a very easy in. I started doing boot camps, and just started teaching the skill. I ended up going full time with that in 2021. And so that's what I do now. And of course, the world went virtual and have had the opportunity to work with athletes all across the country at this point, work with teams as well. And even in that professional world too, right? Because I think it was said earlier, it's like sports parallels life. So, whether your high performance is, in your chosen sport or out in the career world, mindset impacts everyone. So it really just kind of flows from one to the next.
There's no doubt. And so the Pittsburgh State Gorillas, right, in Kansas.
Yes.
Yeah, yes, yes, yes.
I was a gorilla.
Very unique. Always had a great football program, as I remember. Probably still do. So you got into this field. What was the impetus? Was it when you were an athlete? Were there any things that you struggled with yourself that, or other people struggled with, that you thought, you really wanted to dive more into this field?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably watching, I became a student really early on. So I think that was to my benefit, but you can look around and see when people get in their head, and not that, obviously I did. You don't play sports and not get in your head at some point. But, just seeing how athletes hold themselves back based on where their confidence is, where their belief is in themselves, if they're overthinking, and even just so many competitive athletes think they're supposed to play perfect, and they give themselves zero grace with, mistakes. And so it's just, man, when you get in your head, it translates out on the field and on the court, and you can see the frustration. And I think that, again, like, that's where that question kept coming up for me personally, was why is this not taught? teaching someone those mindset skills makes such a huge difference.
Why do you think it is not taught? What are some of the reasons why, you see it kind of put on the back burner a lot of times, unless they're professional athletes or college athletes where they're at a big program? Why do you see that it's not taken as seriously? I mean, obviously it's emerging now much more,
Yes, yes.
but why do you think that until real recently, that had been something that really people didn't talk about that much?
Um, I think one, it's the coach that's out on the court, right? So the coaches got to understand it, and they're the ones that's trying to speak that into the athletes. And coaches are going to say things, they're going to drip on their players, but one, do they have the tools needed to really help an athlete translate what does that mean and how to put it into action? um, you know because a lot of times they don't, unless they've been a student of it themselves. And then it
Mhm.
also becomes a time, you've got a coach has, X number of hours or whatever to teach the X's and O's and the skills, those physical skills. And so that is the first thing that a coach works on. And a lot of times I think too, it just kind of becomes that time thing where you have to you can't just drip on an athlete and really expect them to change or to pull them out of that downward spiral or that low state that they're in, the slump, right? um, you know uh, it's taken a little bit more time in teaching them how to control their state and their focus and that mental side of the game. And I think a lot of times that just doesn't get done.
It's a difficult thing. It's something that unless you have the skill set in there, you really need help. Coaches don't understand how to motivate. They might understand how to lead, but handling situations where may be out of their framework is not something they are used to doing. What are some of the things that athletes like? How do you identify when an athlete might need help or start to need help in that direction?
For me, of course, this is what I do, but I believe it should be taught even proactively.
Okay.
Right? If athletes were taught ahead of time how powerful their mind is and how important it is, what you were thinking, when you're out there throughout your days, it transfers into life. So really getting them super conscious of what is going through their head and what stories are they telling themselves in any given situation.
Mm,
So ideally, proactively, but most of the time when I get athletes, it's especially if it's it's middle school through college, but it's typically the phone call from the parent, and the athlete has
Right.
just completely downward spiraled. So I usually get, the athlete when they are completely frustrated, angry, mad, upset. The parents are too. They've hit the end of the road. They don't know what to do. They've said all of the things, right? And you can say all of the things like, you're better than that, just have confidence. So it's like you're trying to build your child up, but until you can peel back those layers as far as like what is going on in their head and start changing that dialogue, the perception, the story, then that athlete themselves are able to bring themselves out of it. So it kind of both, I guess. Proactively is
Yeah, no,
ideal, but
yeah.
I think that, yeah, but I think, Angie, you make a great point there is, even talking about what you do, like you get them when they're already off the cliff, like they're
yeah.
already at rock bottom, whereas if this was something that we could instill in our athletes at a younger age, and I'm not talking, you have to hammer this point home, but just make them aware that what's going through their head is kind of normal, right? That self-doubt, that lack of confidence, that's all part of sport. That's the ups and downs of sports in general. I think if you approached it, or more coaches approached proactive mentality of let's talk about this from the beginning, then you wouldn't have that aspect of it, or at least it wouldn't be as dramatic or as drastic, where now you're literally pull them out of like the depths of hell where they feel like they are mentally, it just wouldn't be such a long path back, right? Where
Right.
you could kind of put some of that work into it. But I 100% agree. Coaches just, there's so much going on in a coach's world, right? Especially when it comes to, high schoolers, and there's just so much off the field that they are not equipped to handle when it comes to that. I also think that, and I would love for you to touch on that, the fact that each kid, each athlete is different in their own mindset and their own, right? Like that, how does that individuality play a role when it comes to their own personal mindsets? How different is every kid?
Well, yeah, you said it. Obviously, every kid is unique. But I would say that the principles of teaching them, what they need to know, to pull themselves out of any situation, those principles are the same, right? And, I get athletes when they're all over the place, and I've even had as young as 8 and 9-year-olds, and that typically that's like a gymnast, that's in the gym multiple hours
Yeah.
ready and really getting in their head. But so it's like all different walks, all different ages, but again, the foundation of the mindset, is really starting to get the athlete to get conscious of what is going through your head, right? You've got to start paying attention to how you are talking to yourself. And I do start training the athlete of we're going to develop you into, you are going to be your own internal coach. Right. So that way, the better they get at catching themselves in the negative stories and in that negative dialogue, then they start having that power and the ability to flip it. And because their individuality is whatever that story is for them, right? Everyone has a different story, a different way that they are going to be hard on themselves, to beat themselves up, to think that they're not enough, and comparison, all of those types of things. But it does boil down to, let's pay attention to what that is. And then understand that you have the ability to change the story into a story that is going to build you up and push you forward, and really help you to reach your next level. So, I look at the whole aspect of the athlete too, what are their goals, and who are they at a deeper level? And then that helps to take the story that they have to help them move towards their next level and start making progress in, that positive direction.
Yeah, it's when parents come to you and they're at the end, there's something they're struggling with. A lot of times the parents don't know how to deal with it. The athlete obviously is learning how to deal with it. Do you coach both groups of people on this? Is that something that you work them both through? Because parents obviously are dealing with it differently from an athlete, and what do you need the parent to focus on?
Yes, I do end up working with both, especially if I'm working one-on-one with an athlete. I do have things where you can go through the video series and it's not a lot of touch with me, but then I obviously coach athletes one-on-one. And when I do that, I am staying in touch with the parent and coaching the parents somewhat as well. And what I really encourage, because when they work with me, the whole family basically has my program. So depending on the age too, but regardless of whether they're going through the program together as a family or if the athlete's watching it, I'm really encouraging the parents to watch it, because if the parents will also watch it, pay attention, apply it to their own life, and it also gives them an understanding of what their athlete is going through. And I think that it helps them to respond differently, whether, it's them trying to overhelp an athlete after a game or overcoach an athlete, because so many times that just is creating, right, another, it's adding to the story that the athlete already has in their head. And so, recently I was, had a conversation with a family, and I could tell that the dad was mom and dad both really trying to help their kid, but it was like so much that it was creating more pressure, more stress on the athlete. And I just encourage them to, one, go through the program with the athlete, but take that step back and just let the athlete be, and be nothing more than, great job. And as hard as that is, it's sometimes, right? Because as a past athlete ourselves, it's really hard to not coach and encourage your athlete. But sometimes that's a great thing. The parent understands and there's a connection there. But sometimes, and I think a lot of times, it becomes too much for the athlete, and it kind of becomes overwhelming and just is another layer of them trying to be perfect and trying to please the parent, which really holds you out of flow when it comes to performance.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of everything, is that the parents, it's hard for them to manage their own emotions on it as well. I think how that's it. So just going and saying, hey, good job, or that's hard for parents to do. I mean, it's yeah. And I'm going to jump out because I'm frozen here and jump back in, but I'll let you start answering the question. How are there different tools you give them to try and help manage that? Because that's different. I'm not talking about like, hey, correcting them, because if you're coming to them but even like being not saying anything, right? Sometimes you said like words of encouragement can actually create more stress, right? Because there's an expectation level. So how do you go and coach them on that part of it?
So once, I start off with the power of your thoughts, and redefining mistakes and failures. So that's where I start with an athlete. And that really, again, it gets them thinking about their thoughts and their stories. Well, the next layer of that is how to control your state. And controlling your state is essentially learning and understanding how to control your emotions. And I think it's really good for athletes when we kind of name it and we talk through all of those emotions that they actually have, and they understand that they are normal and that happens to all of us. And we are always all going to have high states and low states, because it's just life, right? So whether you're an athlete and you're out on the field, you're going to have high and low states, and in life, we're going to have high and low states. And again, that is your emotions. But it's understanding that what you think about and the stories that you tell, so whatever you have going through your head, that leads to how you feel. So that leads to those emotions. So I also start working with athletes, like really try to catch yourself when you're in that high state, when you do have confidence, you feel like you're in flow and you feel great. And I want you to think about what you were just focused on. And then you've got to also do the opposite. When you are frustrated, mad, angry, whatever it is, then I want you to pause and catch yourself. Again, what were you just focused on? Because most of the time when we are in a low state, you are focused on what is going wrong and that you are not good enough. And why can I not be as good as the next guy? Or why did I make that mistake? And it's those layers of how you're talking to yourself and the pressure you're putting on yourself. And then to translate that to a parent, it's no different for us, like out in the adult world, controlling our emotions, right? When we get upset about something, what are you focused on? What are you thinking about? It's no different. And so even as a parent, I think, parents feel pressure as well. Youth athletics, right?
Oh, yeah.
And everybody wants their kid to be the best, and you want the best for your child. And that's fair. All of us want that. With that, it's getting a parent to pay attention to the stories that they're telling. Why does that kid already getting looked at? Why does that kid already have offers? And why is my kid, why does he keep messing up? And why is he in a slump? And when a parent is doing that, what happens is, even if you're trying to say good job, you are still carrying that negative energy because that's where your thought process is. Right. And so it's like people can feel that. And so you've got to flip your story as a parent and your focus as a parent and know that your young athlete, they have got their own path ahead of them. You're going to support them. Their job is just to be the best them that they can be. And I think as parents, so many times it's the comparison thing, and a parent feels like their child's behind, and then there comes the pressure, right, that they're putting on their kid, and for a parent to understand that you are actually hurting your kid most often, because that child feels that pressure whether you're directly saying it or not, and it makes them feel like they are not enough. So
yeah, Angie, I think that's a great point, right? Because I mean, the compare and contrast aspect of everything, especially with, social media and likes and clicks and all this other things, and just it's really it's brutal. The eyes. I mean, it's not. I mean, it's just opened the eyes of parents to see more of what's out there, and for the most part, it used to be when they only saw what was in their town or whatever league they were in, or maybe the other town that the team was playing. It was very kind of tight knit, small. Now you have, with all the travel teams and now out of state stuff and people traveling all over the country with travel ball. And this is, across all sports. Right. And then, hey, I see this, 15-year-old kid and he's got an offer and he's, over that stuff, I think, has really just kind of poisoned the well, to go along with, hey, now you're sitting in the bleachers, right? And, this mom is talking about how Billy he's on this travel team and then he's doing all of this extra stuff, right? And now why is my son not doing that? Or why didn't he get asked to do that? And now you have that compare and contrast thing where, yeah, you start pushing a little bit more when you need to know exactly where your kid's at and they're right
That's
where they need to be
point.
Type thing. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's just a lot of that stuff is really, like I said, poison the well a little bit in terms of that. There's also not a parent that's willing to stand up and say, you know what, like, Jimmy's out here because he just wants to run around, right? Like, he just wants to be a part of it.
There are some, I think, there are, they do, but you know what happens is, and what makes it very,
they
very
get
difficult.
muffled.
If you're in, we talked about this, like, really, there's really like 3 levels of sports now, and you have to kind of identify that. Like, is your kid not striving or somewhat near a higher level? Is he in that like travel ball, but not the highest level? And then is he really a recreation athlete, having a good time learning the sport, right? And me and Derek talk about this all the time. We really think there's 3 levels. Well, the problem is that everything is always 2 levels. Everyone's trying to be like a travel, quote unquote, high level, or they're trying to be in rec, right? Yeah. And then rec is mad at travel ball people that are in a rec thing and they're dominating. And then travel ball people are mad at rec people that come in and think that they're in travel ball, but they're really not at that level. And all this, because there's really 3 levels. But the problem is no one wants to be in the middle level, which is I'm better. I'm advanced beyond recreation, but I'm not yet really putting in everything to it. Okay. And maybe you shouldn't be, you know what I mean?
Right.
Because that doesn't work around when they're all drinking wine or whatever, or beer or whatever, you know what I mean? And it doesn't work in the social circles, right? And I think
because everybody wants their kid to be taught, hey, Billy's on this team and he's on this team.
Yeah, I'm having fun. I don't care about that. Or my kid is trying to be the best, right? And most kids are really in that probably middle realm.
Right. Yeah.
Now, they're trying to be better, but they're not really that elite guy. And that's the majority of people. And then, there are the people that want to, that's why rec has been struggles in a lot of places because there are a group of people that want to just learn the sport for fun, but as soon as they advance beyond that, they want to get out of rec. So that what makes rec hard kind of deal.
Yeah.
What and Derek brought this up because it's really, really, really important. How do parents and kids navigate the information overload part of it, right? Because I just started inviting, because we run middle school showcases around the country. We used to run high school, but then high school kids now think they're too good, so they don't want to go to. So it's like a whole thing there. That's not here or there. So anyway, like this high school, middle school, like freshman, middle school thing, right? I start going through all these kids that I'm starting to invite, just the first phase of it. I could not believe, Derek, the kids, the size of them. All right, these kids. Now, these are obviously the higher level to begin with, and nationwide. And I see where parents begin to freak out, right? Because I'm literally looking at a in North Jersey, a 6'2", 165-pound wide receiver in 8th grade, and I watched the film just because I was curious, and he was really good. and then I see this guy in Texas who's alive and who's 6'4", 260 pounds and actually can move at 8th grade, right? So what happens is the kids who are really in the middle, they start to freak out. Their parents freak out. They freak out.
Yeah.
Why are we not that size? Why are we not there yet? Right. And
it's like, well, mom, you're 5'8" and dad's 5'8", and that's why
right.
is 4'8", right? Like there's genetics to it. So, but look, Angie,
that's part of it. But that's part of it. It doesn't change that they freak out, though. But that's the big point. Is it doesn't, and then the pressure gets put down on the kid that he doesn't even know that pressure is there. Okay, gets put on the kid, and then he's trying to do things out of the realm. Is there?
But Dave, I think Angie made a good point though too, right? Before you even get into your question, I think Angie made a really great point that if we were proactive in this and made these parents and children more self-aware of the feelings that are coming about, then this wouldn't be such like a wow moment, right? Where they've already kind of had this, like, hey, this is coming, right? Like there's going to be a time where you're going to have to decide, do you want to do this for fun? Do you want to do this for this, right? The mental side of it in terms of how serious do you really want to be about this? And that's really hard as a kid at the younger age because you don't even know what's going on, right? For the most part, you're trying to just learn so much, that information overload, right? I mean, I think that's kind of part of it too. But go ahead, Dave, ask your question because I'm curious to see where you go with it.
I think that where I was going with is the expectation level and what those athletes need to manage, taking the parent out of the mix. So obviously you're talking to the parent, you're going to have a decent amount of parents who don't understand it. As they become middle school athletes and they start to take things maybe a little bit more seriously, how do you get them to understand that they're on their own journey? Like what are, because the thing I'm always looking for is like tools, right? What tools help them to get them to understand that they're on their own journey? And for example, they come out of a game, they play well, but not as well as they think they should have played. Let's take the parent out of it because someone else maybe was in that same game that was at a different level from them. How do you help them manage that part of it and the things that they can control, not the stuff that they can't control?
Well, you kind of nailed it right there. You just was talking about what can you control. And I really do focus on that with athletes because you're not always going to be able to, control the outcome, right? It's like, but what you can control is how you show up, the effort that you're going to giving 100%. And then it's really working with them to build that trust. And I do look and work with athletes really focusing on you are more than an athlete, because I think identity can really get hung up in that when you're a competitive athlete, that's their whole identity. And so when your whole identity is
Right.
I'm a competitive athlete, and it's like, no. So part of my program is like, you are more than an athlete. And what
You're
do
way
you
more than that. There's more that
you have
defines you than
talent.
just sports
Yeah,
and just cleats and just
yeah.
a
It's like,
ball. But
and
go ahead, AJ, go ahead.
yeah, no, it's just them really looking at those gifts and that uniqueness, and appreciating like some of that uniqueness that they have, because I also think sometimes the things that make us feel different, um, especially kids, because you're trying to fit in, they'll suppress that, and instead of that, that could be the one thing that where you are going to shine in life. Right. And so it's like looking at all of the gifts and talents that you have and really appreciating that. And I also, I tell athletes and parents all the time, 7% of high school athletes are going to go on to the next level. That's it.
Right.
That is it. And so, yeah, it's like
I use those numbers all the time.
Right. And it's really like the most important thing that is coming out of youth sports or youth athletics. It should be who you become. Right. How do you handle resilience? How do you handle mistakes? How do you bring yourself out of that slump when things don't go your way? Because that is going to be the part that translates to life. And so it partly is that bigger perspective and talking them through that, whether it's a parent or an athlete, and looking at your identity, and you are more than. And even if you do go on and play college sports, guess what? You're done at 22, 23. It's a very small percentage, right? It's going to go beyond that. And so it's trying to also, like, for parents, like, let's put this back in perspective, guys. I think they end up in it, and it becomes just like you guys were saying, the competitive. It's like keep up with the Joneses of youth athletics, right? And that is not healthy, and it's not a healthy perspective for yourself or for your young athlete. So it's putting things back in perspective, that the most important thing is who your child is becoming as they grow into the best athlete that they can be.
I think I think you nailed that. One of the difficult things for athletes and parents is because they're so focused on performance, they forget about the relationships that they build with friends and stuff, and maybe some of the values they learn from coaches. Um, and part of it is, uh, there's so much emphasis on not just I don't know if I want to use the word winning, but there's so much emphasis on I guess it is winning, right? And that they forget about the journey of the process, right? So like winning always to me is a result of the journey. I don't count that in recreation. Winning in recreation is usually the result recreational sports is usually the result of one group having better players. That's just the bottom line. I mean, I hate saying that at that age, whatever that age is.
Yes.
Okay. And when parents get upset about things, like I'm like, this group over here has a better group of players. Did they have a good time playing? Because sometimes that happens, right? So now when they're in a sport that they're practicing more. So let's say they're in a travel sport, they're practicing a couple times a week or a few times a week, and it's not a recreation sport. Is the coach developing or figuring out ways that they can improve the athlete in the long run? So, and then does winning come from that versus winning at all costs, right? And it's very, very hard. I think it's very, very hard for parents and athletes because coaches are fired up no matter what age you're at. I mean, because I've been at all levels, and they're fired. They get fired up, and the kids can get fired up. But at the end of the day, like, are we continuing to have like a back and forth of development? Meaning, are you expected to be at a certain place and make practices. That's important. Like, that's an
Yeah.
important value system. Okay. I'm not talking about someone sick or hurt.
Right.
If you should be there to watch, but if you're sick, obviously nobody wants you to be there if you're sick and getting other people sick.
Yeah.
But and then you get like the hardest part about all this is you get this intermixing of, okay, they're only kids, but then these kids are there all the time. Some kids miss me for a reason that it's nothing bad, but you're trying to teach values. It could be they had a birthday party. I don't know, whatever, right? And they chose to go to the birthday party, and then it starts to get then your value system gets convoluted, and then they try to bring you back and say they're only kids. And that's where the whole thing in the mental side of sports is very difficult for kids, because they get a yin and yang of what's important and what isn't important, and they don't know what is. And if someone's telling me that it's important to be here, and then another kid is not able to be there, and the program as a whole, like, what are you going to really do about it? You're really not going to do much about it, right? You're just going to kind of deal with it when they're younger. And it puts the coaches in tough situations, puts the other players in tough situations. Then the players start to think, is it important? Is it not important? What is important, right? And I think that in sports, that's part of what has gotten very, very difficult for coaches. And I think at the high school level, it's a problem as well. It happened to me a lot over my career as a high school coach. I'm sure it happens to Derek here and there as a high school coach. And
oh God,
yeah, and you're forced to deal with it. But if you come down too hard, you're a bad guy, right? And then
of course,
right, and then the players don't know what is important. And everyone likes to point to, like, because I love Nick Saban's one of my favorite, obviously, and everything in the process. He has all the best athletes that are had all the best athletes that are focused on doing the right things, and had the best program, so he can enforce it on all the players. Even in college programs, not everybody's in that situation, right?
Yeah.
The mental side of that becomes very difficult for athletes. And I'll take parents out of it, because some parents get it, some parents don't. But it's very difficult for athletes. If you're the good player over here, let's say you're in high school, sophomore or junior in high school, and you're building this. I'm not even talking about college here. Building to follow what the coach wants you to do, to be part of it. And you're a good player and you're doing very well. And then you got some other players, coach tries to come down but there's limitations to what he can do. How do you help a player manage beyond think that this is now actually outside of their control? How can they manage their emotions to know I'm striving for certain things, but yet I'm in a team environment? I think it's very, very difficult. And that's the second part of it, beyond like the pressure on kids. The second part of it is the kids that do the right things that are then in a situation where it's not the kids are doing the wrong thing. I'm not talking about a kid who's a jerk or I'm talking about a kid who enjoys the sport but parents take them away, or parents do this with them. And they're not really doing anything bad per se, but it does affect the other athlete's mental health, right? It does affect what they're striving for, and may affect the team, but affects their mental health. Is there something that can be done in that aspect? I'm sure Derek wants to know that one too.
No, one thing that, well, I mean, and I know, I'm sure you guys do this, but one thing from a coach perspective, right, is setting that expectation up front, and the parents hear it and the athletes hear it. That way, if you do have, an athlete missing, or, whatever, for whatever reason, it's really clear, as far as, are they going to play in the next game? Are they not going to play in the next game? Those types of things. So I think that's got to be, up front. From a player perspective, if you are an athlete, it really, to me, it goes back to, and I mean, and this is for anything in life, you have to control what you can control. We are never going to control other people.
Right.
No matter where,
Great point.
and if you are trying to control other people, and if you are going to get upset and mad, then you are only hurting you, because then you are focused on
you ain't gonna last very long.
You are going to drop to a low state. So you're hurting yourself, and you're never going to control whether that kid who really doesn't care that much, right? But man, they contribute to the team. You can't control if they're going to be there or not be there. So your job is to control showing up. You're giving 100%. You are doing everything that you can when you're out there. You're showing up in a high state, because then you are giving yourself the best shot, and you're still giving your team the best shot. So, I mean, I think it boils down to that, honestly. And man, that translates through life, right?
Yeah, no doubt about it.
Oh, yeah,
No
without
doubt
doubt
about it.
And I totally look. It's one of these things, and obviously Dave asked a great question, because we just dealt with this, or at least we did on our team. Where you have a parent
many times. Yeah.
I mean,
and players deal with it. They come to you about it, right? Don't other players come to you about that stuff? Yeah.
And they're in a conundrum too, right? Because look, and I heard this said the other day, right? Like, high school is so much about how you're viewed by your peers, right? Everybody wants to sit at the cool table. Everybody wants to be one of those guys that's in the recognition or this or that, where the hyper focus of how you look to others like reaches its peak when we're obviously that middle school, high school part of it, right? After a while, as you get older, you just really don't give a shit what anybody says, right? Like that's kind of what it is. But that's after years of, and look, nobody wants to be, not at the cool table, right? Like, I don't care how self-aware you are or how comfortable you are in your own skin out there on the field, whatever it is, nobody wants to be viewed as a lesser of something, right? That's just who we are as human beings. That's part of it. And I think, but what I do is, if you can at least make kids and parents more self-aware of these things that are going to go on and these things that are going to happen, and this is where it comes about, you might not be able to change it, you might not be able to, but at least now you have a shot at maybe, right, they'll teeter to the other side of it a little bit, which will put you in a better situation, rather than have the the off the edge type of self-doubt. And I can see it, Angie. I mean, I'm sure that, parents turn to you as almost a last resort. Coaches are turning to you as a last resort, right? Like, hey, my kid is struggling because, he was the starter and now he's not the starter. Or, hey, he's played his entire life and now he's a year and he's not playing because there's a younger kid that's better than him. Well, parents, like, this is a whole life lesson in terms of, you might do everything right and you might work hard and you might do all of these things and still not get what you want. That's kind of, especially when we talk about the recruiting world, because we deal with kids that, try to get to college to play and all these other kind of things. Like, look, man, you might literally, I understand you want to go to this school or get this scholarship and you've done everything right, buddy, but it just isn't in the cards. It's just not there.
Right.
And this is not, to circle back to what earlier, Angie, I think kids just get so caught up in, I'm only defined as being a football player, or I am only defined as what I do on the field. That self-awareness of, you are way more than that in terms of life. Like, this is only a blip, right? This is 5 or 6 years of your life. Even if you make it to the next level, right, it's only another 3 or 4, right? What is your career going to be? Like, the majority of your life comes after these, quote, playing days. So to have them focus on that, I think, could be at least a little bit of a more of a positive move in the positive direction. But ultimately it just kind of is what it is. You kind of learn how to, like, swim in those rough waters and just tread until, maybe sometimes you're in a, the current isn't as hard as it should be and you're okay swimming, but then sometimes you're going to be against the current and it's going to be really, really hard. So I think it's more, it's not like there's not an answer. It's not a black and white type of thing. Like, you're going to live in the gray and you just got to learn how to deal with that. And if we could teach those tools, right, to not only kids or parents, but coaches, or even more so administrators, like this is what professional development shit should be on, Angie, right? Like
Right.
where people just want to focus on all the other shit, where if you coach this, like now you could have a whole team of, at least we got some positive mindset. Could you touch on body language a little bit? How much does that play a role?
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's science behind body language, right? And so I do touch on that because, if you are
Drives
trying
me
to,
crazy,
yeah, if you're trying to
right?
change your
The
state,
palms up guys, right? Or all those kind of things. Like, it's
right?
like, that's my guy out there. He's out there. What are we doing, coach? Like, yep, that's my kid. Great. Here we go. But parents are in the stands doing the same shit, right?
They
Coach,
are.
throw the ball, right? Run the ball. Why are we doing this? Like, there's your examples. Like, I
Because,
just, it's wild.
yeah, it is. You can, like what you were just saying, you can watch somebody, whether it's an athlete or a parent, and we literally could tell what their story is, what's going through their mind, right? And where their state is. And most of the time when you see it, like that, it's obviously like you're swimming in that low state. But there's science too behind um, bringing yourself out of a low state and using your body language for that positive, right? So it's like
Right.
when you move, like when you change your body, when you change it, because as much as a kid can drop his head, throw something coming off the field, be mad, like that is that low state. You can also control that. So it's like if you can pause and decide to keep your head up, still go hit fists with your teammate, even though something just went wrong, right, in your eyes, or didn't go the way that you wanted it to, you can help your body by controlling your body language, controlling your mind, using those two things together. It can help you maintain a higher state. And obviously I've gotten athletes when they come to me and, the example coming up is a young kid striking out, and he goes over to the, you go to the dugout and you're throwing your helmet and throwing your bat and start talking to him about that body language and what does that tell somebody about you too, right? And so it's like coaches are watching, coaches in the stands are watching, parents are watching, and it tells so much about you and who you are, and you being able to control your emotions and control your confidence. That I think that's another layer of self-awareness, right? That you don't have to respond that way when something doesn't go your way. And so it's using the two of those things together to respond in a different way.
It's a great point.
Love it.
It's funny. When I was an athlete, things that went wrong.
You're still an athlete, Dave. You're still an athlete.
It used to fuel me. So
Yes.
but other players were not like that. So,
Yeah.
and I had to learn to control my emotions in a sense that I felt like other people, for me, it would work for me. Like I that's just how I was wired. Like I can like get more intense, and I have to be careful with as a coach as well, because I get more heightened when I get intense, but other people are not like that, right? So, and Derek knows he's coaching me, so I'm able to coach better. And sometimes in those situations, and I've had some of my best coaching days or playing days when I've been something went wrong and I got frustrated.
Yeah.
But most people are not like that, and
Right.
so I think
the
that.
rarity.
Right. Very rare, very rare, very rare. And most people can't read and will read it the wrong way.
Correct.
And that brings other people in different directions. There's two types of athletes, I think. There's the athlete that happens to, they go into the tank, right? And you have to try to get them
right down.
Yeah. Maybe they go palms up, maybe they act, they put their head down, like you said, and they go into the tank. What is the way to handle that person? That's part A. Part B, the person who is highly emotional and kind of somewhat like something bad can end up channeling. Like he's able to channel it in a certain direction. Like a coach could say something to him and he now channels it, right?
Yeah.
Now, sometimes the reactions are bad, but they are able to quickly move on a dime. That would be kind of.
Yeah.
I've noticed kids are one of those two ways most of the time. And how do you get them to those guys to be able to react in the proper manner, or figure out like a strategy that they can react in the right way, so that doesn't affect the rest of their teammates negatively,
Right.
though either they can hand, even one might rise to the occasion with that and the other one goes into the tank, right?
Yeah.
But they still can affect their teammates negatively, or people around them negatively.
Yeah. So when it comes to athletes and coaches, right? And I do talk a lot about this because athletes are really tied to their coaches. And I start off by saying, most coaches, probably almost all coaches, are old athletes themselves. So they're highly competitive, right? They're going to be intense. They want to win just like you do. They want to hit, they want you to reach your next level. And what happens is when you look at the way intense coaches come across, right? The mistake is made, a coach is going to yell, they're getting onto the athlete. And then this is where the athlete is going to create a story, right? So you just yelled at me and I'm going to decide, okay, he doesn't think I'm good enough. And he doesn't, that coach doesn't believe in me. They don't think I'm capable. They don't like me anymore, right? Like you just create this downward spiral of thoughts. And then what happens is that athlete's belief attaches to that. And they also think that the coach doesn't like them because of the
Personally.
story, personally, because of the story that they've created.
Correct.
And so,
Correct.
and I start off with this early because I just think that this happens a lot. And so I challenge them. What if your coach does care about you? What if your coach is only trying to push you because they know that you are better? They want you to hit your next level. And so that coach may come across intense, but he's trying, or he or she is trying to get you to channel it for you to really hit your next level. And I talk to an athlete or anyone that if you let a coach or somebody saying anything to you take your power away, which is your confidence, your high state, then you are giving your power away to that other person. Because I have worked with athletes and especially in the college level that really does have a negative, a negative coach, right?
Right, of course.
Not a positive environment.
Right.
And it goes back to, you cannot control how that coach is going to coach. You cannot control how that coach is going to respond to mistakes, what they're going to say to you, anything. However, you can control, the only thing that you can control is you and your response. And your response, you have got to condition your mind just like you condition your body so that when you are getting yelled at, you are not dropping to a lower state and you are able to maintain that focus and create the story that's going to serve you. So that story can be, you know what? If he's going to be negative, let him, but I still know that he wants me to reach my next level. We are still trying to win games regardless of how that coach or that person is coming across to me. So when an athlete, again, lets themselves drop to a low state because of a coach, they're giving their power away. And so I talk a lot about once you've figured out how to control your state, because you are always going to perform your best and show up your best when you are in that high state. It's true for all of us, right? And when you give that up to someone else or to something else. I mean, I even had one athlete one time say, my gosh, I can't believe how much power I was giving to that orange ball. Right. Like it literally controlled her emotions day to day, depending on how he thought she showed up and performed.
Yeah.
And so it's the same. It's like the better that you get at maintaining a high state, regardless of what is happening around you or happening in life, like that is where your power is. And that is what I ultimately try to teach, and you said earlier, like kind of talking about treading water. And it's like things are always going to come at us, whether it's in sports or it's in life. And we always have a choice in how we can respond. And that is where our control is. Outside of that, like, again, the only thing you can control is your response.
Yeah. It's a great point, Angie. It really is a great point.
The other thing that I thought was
he must have a
interesting.
bad connection, but
Yeah, I have a bad
gotta
connection.
love
I don't know what's
technology.
going on.
I think you're so spot on with it. You know, parents and stuff. It's just so hard to control the outside factors, right? Even for them, like they're dealing with a lot of this at the same time. Meanwhile, they're supposed to be the example for the child. Look, I will
That's hard.
forever,
So
and I wasn't
one of the
like
quick
this as a
questions I
younger
have,
coach.
and
It came with the kind of experience of being in this now and seeing different levels of what it is that, you know, you can only control those certain things, but parents ultimately are going to dictate what it is, right? I always use the example, right? When I was in schools and I was teaching, you know, history, and it was an election year, right? And you're talking to students and it's, you know, hey, who are we voting for president, right? Well, they yell out a name and it's like, well, okay, why? Well, my parents, that's who they vote for. That's what they talk about at the dinner table. That's what they hear. So they're going to side with the parent, just like whatever the parent says when they get in the car. That's what they're going to go with. If they constantly hear, you know, your coach has no idea, or so-and-so should be playing, or why are you doing this? If everything's being questioned or coming from that point of view, well, then that's how they're going to act. You know, but sometimes, a lot of times they're put in that conundrum of mom and dad saying this, I go to practice now and a coach is saying this. What do I do? Like, they're the ones that put food on the table for me. So how do I go against my parents, even if I feel like, you know, like this is I really want to side with you, coach, but this is kind of how it works. So just in general, to put kids in those situations, to have to make those types of decisions, that's stuff that's out, it shouldn't even be a factor, right? Be supportive, you know, go with it. I mean, look, if you need to have that conversation,
to think that that's going to happen.
100%, 100%. And I think that's really hard.
Well, Derek brings up a really good point. How does an athlete, and it's going to be only teenagers, you know, it's not, or college kids. It's not going to be a 10-year-old. They're not going to be able to push back. But once they've gotten to,
what do you mean? Level, Troy doesn't push back on you?
No. He does in a different way. He does in a different way, because he'll tell me, like, I like this teacher. I like, you know, if there's something that I don't necessarily like, he'll say it, but I would say he might be a little different. He's used to some different things. Not the average kid that doesn't have like a parent that's involved in this stuff all the time. It might be a little different. What can a teenager do to create boundaries for their parents when they're involved in sports? Because I think, and Derek brings up a really good point, it's hard for them to do that, right? How can an athlete have that conversation with a parent? Because it does affect their mental health. How can they have that conversation with the parents and create a level of boundary? Let's say the parent is sane, okay? Because obviously insane parents, you cannot. Someone that's insane, it's not going to work no matter what you do. But if someone is crazy,
can't fix crazy,
overstepping their bounds, but they're, you know, I try to think, hey, in general, they're good people. They just get a little higher level, but not the insane person. But the person that's a decent person, but they're, you know, they want their kid to, they feel like they're being disrespected, whatever it is. How can an athlete go and create that boundary with their parent and talk to them about that?
One, I would say that takes a lot of emotional maturity, number one, to really do that. The way that you said, like, and talk to them about it, because unfortunately, probably a lot of times what happens is the parent is coming down on the kid, and then the kid's going to kind of come right back at them with the same energy. Right. And so that doesn't help anything. And so I would say in the moment, if an athlete cannot say anything and just let the parent be or say or do, right? Because it's no different than a coach yelling at you.
Right. Again, just like, let them go. Let them get it out, right? Like let them.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like taking on that phrase of like, let them say, and you don't have to, and it's learning to protect your energy. You can let them vent, let them have their views, but you do not have to. It's like, if you push back and you're going to get into an argument or you're going to argue your stance, you are joining them where they're at. And so you have then lost your control of your state.
I love that.
right? So you're dropping. So I don't care if it's mom or dad or coach, that's what happens. And so if you can let them be who they are, your job, again, the only person you can ultimately control is you. Now, if you are going to have that conversation with a parent, that's a wonderful thing, but you've got to do it outside of in the moment.
Right.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah. That's not one of those fresh off field conversations. We're not doing that.
You need to be able to say, like, hey, when this happens after a game, this is how it makes me feel. Now, if a parent gets defensive, because there's a lot of adults who don't have emotional maturity and can't have that conversation, so then they feel attacked. So then game on again, right?
Right.
Sometimes you can't control that. And so then as an athlete, it is learning to protect your energy and not joining them. Let them say what they have to say. It's like putting a bubble around yourself, and it's not that you're disrespectful in that. You're still being respectful, but you do not have to take in the energy of what they're saying. There's a level of learning to control, like, how I feel. No matter what somebody outside of me is saying, if you are getting attacked, I can still walk away, and you did not have control of me. You did not drop me to a low state. Now, that is a high level of emotional maturity, but I believe each and every person has the ability to get there. And so I start teaching that, and I've started teaching it to middle schoolers.
Yep.
And that's, I think, the prime time for that, right? Is because that's when the most pushback does come between child and adult. And look, I posted about it today. Like, a lot of parents need to really kind of understand that, parenthood is the ultimate sacrifice, right? And it's no longer about you, right? Like, you've had your time to shine. Coaches as well, right? Some guys are in it for, to put their name on it, when, look, these kids only have a short window to enjoy this, especially a sport like football, where you're not going to play in a men's basketball league or a softball league, right? Like, football is high school football for the most part, and that's it for a lot of these guys. They have 4 years memories that they're still going to be talking about when they're 60, 70. That's what it is. So I think that part of it too really plays a role. I love the protect your energy thing. I really do. It allows it gives the athlete a sense of self, and they can something they can control, right? In an uncontrollable situation. Hey, I'm feeling this way right now. Like, it's really positive. Like, if you're going to try and pop this bubble or bring me down, I need to take a step away, right? But like you said, that only happens with an extremely mature student athlete at such a young age. It's really hard. But if they could see one guy on the team do it, then the rest would follow suit. That's really kind of how it works. And especially, again, with football, where you have a mass amount of guys on the team. It's not like basketball where there's only a few, right? Like, it is, football is a lot of dudes, and you got to figure out, how can I appease the masses, right? If they would now be one of their peers doing it, I think that might change it a little bit, just because, nobody wants to be outside of that group.
My linebacker coach in college used to say about when you come out of a game and, whether you thought you played good or you played bad, he always said, it's never as good as you think, and it's never as bad as you think.
Correct.
That's so right.
And I heard the Indiana football coach, obviously there's a million videos going on around him now because he's had so much success recently. And, he talks about the best thing players can do is keep an even keel no matter what's going on in the game. So whether a coach is getting on you, and you talked about this, or no one is getting on you, you score a touchdown, you make a mistake, just focusing on the next thing you have to do and keeping an even keel, because all of that ends up being a distraction. Not that you don't get excited. Obviously people get excited, but mentally keeping that state that you talk about, which is like, no matter whether you're hooting and hollering or you're quiet, you have that state of flow that enables you to be able to be focused in that right direction. And I think that's important. It really, really, that even keelness is so hard to do. Is there something that you do like breath work or anything like that? Like when they feel themselves getting out of that state, is there something that they can do? Like you should really feel yourself losing
Like snap them out of it.
control. What are some things they could quickly do in a game or in a practice that could get them back to where they need to be?
Yeah, well, yeah. So a few things come to mind there. One, I do start off with working with athletes to create that mantra or phrase, right? So when that mistake happens, that they don't want, they're able to say that to themselves and keep themselves on track so they're ready for the next play. And that can just be a short, 1, 2, or 3 phrases that really, it really does. It lets them let go of the negative thing and keeps them on track. And yes, to the other things that I use is breath work. We do breath work. Just teaching an athlete how important breath is and what it does do for you. And it can keep you focused. It can keep you centered and grounded. So there's a lot of power in that. And in addition to that, the thing that I work with athletes on is using visualization. And using visualization in a way, not that, and yes, in regard to the skill, but I think even more important than the skill itself with visualization is visualizing yourself ahead of time. So before the game, you are visualizing yourself maintaining that high state. You're seeing yourself in it. You're feeling yourself in it. And not just with everything going right, but you even see yourself out there and something doesn't go your way, and you visualize yourself staying in that strong state and letting it go and maintaining it, because your brain does not know the difference, right, between that mind movie that you've got going on in reality. So you're essentially, those are putting in your mental reps right there. By doing visualization is a really powerful tool, and it's way underutilized. But to me, that's one of the strongest ways to condition your state.
I think that's a really, really good thing. Like, closing your eyes and just thinking about for a couple seconds.
Being in it.
Yeah, what you want to happen, and then you're back, boom, you're back in action. There was, many years ago, it's funny because it worked, and I really didn't know much about it at the time. But I think I was in like one of these phases where I was reading Tony Robbins books left and right, and I was coaching, and I had a player that was just a fantastic athlete, but for some reason he could not make a catch like when you needed to. And I said this like kind of casually, but I not thinking he would do anything about it. But I said take a tape recorder and record yourself saying I can catch the ball, I can catch the ball. It's right underneath your bed as you go to sleep. And I was kind of like half
kidding, kind of not.
Like, dude, he did it for a whole week. Okay. And what was crazy is the kid became an unbelievable receiver. He did it for a whole week.
Sometimes that visualization
it was
a big thing.
Would play it under his, until he fell asleep, and his parents would come in and turn it off because probably crazy. But he would do it. He would play it, and it was like it's like the old Saturday Night Live thing where the guy's in the mirror and he says, "I'm good enough. I'm smart enough, and doggone it, people like me." Like that. It's crazy, but like that stuff does help you when you're in a tough, especially when you're in a rut, right?
Yeah.
You're in a rut, and it's sometimes not like the kid was catching balls he would catch after practice, and then you'd see him catch a million balls, and then all of a sudden in the game he would drop one, and it was something that was going on in his head, and he was able to correct it and tribute to him. And he played in college, by the way, and he played for 4 years because he was a really good athlete, and he fixed some of those things and got it corrected. But it was really, really interesting how some things that you kind of don't even think about as that it might help really helps. I used to love Tony. I mean, I don't listen to him as much. I used to love Tony Robbins when I was younger. Like I had his tapes as literally as like a 19-year-old.
Yeah.
And I would get his tapes and I would play him and just because it had nothing to do with yeah, you want to accomplish things, but it had more to do with like put you in the right mind frame. Like you can
Right.
Yes.
whatever. Like when
Yeah.
people say that those things, like Tony Robbins, is
They talk about you speak it into
I think
existence,
he's a
right?
grifter.
Or
It's like, hey, like you know what? He's helped a lot of people, and that is why he's paid the way he is.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
damn right. Damn right.
There's a reason why he's able to do it. He's able to change people's mindsets. And yes, he does some crazy things that people, gets people to believe they can walk across hot coals. And I think he was sued for
Right.
that.
Sometimes you need that.
Yeah, but but those things make a difference, and like, and it's all obviously some level of moderation, but
Yeah.
those things make a big difference. And visualization, I'm 100% on board with. I think that it really helps
Yeah.
people change their state in a very quick
Yeah.
fashion. And if they do it, the more they do it over time, it helps them to be able to get over those humps that they might have that are standing in their or those obstacles that are standing in their way. Before we let you go, because we've definitely taken a lot of your time, I'm curious if there was like a quick 3-step thing that athletes can do to help themselves on a daily basis. Like what would those kind of quick 3-step things be to help them to be able to be in that higher state that you're talking about?
One, I would say, see how many times you can catch yourself throughout the day in your thoughts and in your stories. Because once you are able to catch yourself, then you can change it. And so you can start changing that story then to one, or even like, sometimes I like to say soften it, right? Because it's hard to. So instead of just saying I'm horrible, it's like I'm terrible at this. It's like, okay, I know that I'm getting better, and so you start shifting that story. And as you change your story, it's really paying attention to your state and what are you focused on. And so again, it's the number one is like, get conscious, of your thoughts, catch it and change it. And that is where you have your power. And I would say that no matter what is coming at you, your power is in choosing how you respond. And that's choosing how you respond, in your thoughts and in your stories. And then, even your body language, right? That's the outside part. So.
Absolutely. There's no doubt about it. That's some really, really great quick tips, because we all get lost in what we're thinking about and let it consume us. And that's a big part of what we do. Sounds like you'd probably be a great marriage counselor as well.
Well, a lot of these things translate into.
Obviously, they do.
Yeah, right.
They definitely do.
Angie, thank you so much. Listen, I can't take. I'm so glad that we connected, and that we were able to work this out. Really, some awesome tips, some awesome insight into kind of the mental side of it, which we all deal with. So, Angie, I really appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thanks. You too.
Bye. I thought I solved my problem, but I can't solve it. I can't solve it. I don't know what's going on today.
All good. Tomorrow, we're back again tomorrow, bud. So 10 a.m. with Coach Joe Stokowski from Grayson High School in Georgia.
From Grayson High School. I think eventually I need a regular camera here that attaches to it. My phone must be. Not my phone. My computer must somehow get compromised. Yeah, that was really good stuff. Interesting stuff. It's the mind is an important part of what we do. So it's coaches, it's hard as well. So it's probably harder.
Definitely.
Especially a high school coach. God bless you guys.
Fuck.
God bless you.
All right, man. Let me time for practice. Can't wait. Nice,
soaky,
wet.
Oh, yeah.
It's a nice little soaky wet Tuesday. So it is what it is. Let's rock and roll.
It's not raining anymore.
Dude, my poor daughter. Daddy, it's still raining. Daddy, it's still raining. Daddy. I'm like, yeah, baby, it is still raining. Sorry. Like, we cannot go outside and throw the ball. Sorry. I know you like to do that, but we can't. So we resorted to indoor football, which a 2.5-year-old that wants to play football with daddy down in the basement is I was already winning on that one. So
Well, there's your Olympic flag athlete right there.
she's mean as hell. So like, I don't know. Gonna have to teach her to pull flags and not hit shit. So here we go.
Oh, that's great. That's awesome. All right.
Yeah, buddy. All right, man.
Talk to you later.
I'll talk to you later.